What is going on, everybody? This is Slick from Breaking the Clutch back again with another surprise balance update. After the last massive update we received from 343 and CA, there are so many things happening to the game. The game is really fun at the moment. Let me know in the comment section down below if you also think it's fun, because I think it's an absolute blast now. I feel like everything's so much more fair. And of course, there are still a few strong things that, borderline OP, but I think mostly it's really fun at this point in the game. A lot more strategies and builds are viable, including leaders. So let me know what you guys think about the current meta. And looks like we'll jump right into the goals of this update. Ensure banished scouts and suicide grunts serve as adequate counters to Marine Hellbringer force. Make sure UNSC mirrors have more variety than Marine Hellbringer builds. Increase Jackrabbit viability in UNSC mirrors and ensure that they can counter Marine Hellbringers. Note that this will be dependent on player map leader selection. Small adjustments to maintain balance across Tier 1 triangle based on the above changes. Grunt Mines, Ram, and Scouts. Address some changes. There are additional issues which were skewing the early to mid game. Heat of Battle, Raid, Jerome, there's some crazy stuff going on there with characters, Jerome's Mantis, and ODSTs, and then adjust some other units to fit more effectively into the early game triangle, Elite Enforcers and Jump Pack Brutes. As you guys probably know, the Hellbringers at this point in the game, especially Kinsano's Hellbringers, are slightly ridiculous. I mean, if you have too many of them, it's really hard to stop. I think you really need to have a good cutter player on the other side to beat your Hellbringers if you're playing as Kinsano, or just have another Kinsano, because those Hellbringers with Raid and Heat of Battle, or I'm sorry, not Raid, Redline and Heat of Battle at the same time are just so strong. And, you have this awkward thing where you have Heat of Battle, Redline, Raid, and then Inspiration, which are all three different aspects from three different leaders that provide an extra bonus to UNSC infantry. So those three things, and some either more than infantry as well. Kinsano provides that to a couple different styles of units, and Inspiration does as well. So anyway, as I was saying, those things kind of skew some certain UNSC leaders. So I'm really interested to see if they're going to address this. Especially making, say, Scouts and Jackrabbits a little bit better early game. That's going to be interesting to see. And then, of course, changing Elite Enforcers and Jump Pack Brutes is going to be interesting as well. So let's jump right into the changes. Looks like damage modifier versus buildings. Core infantry has been increased by 17%. Don't know if I agree with that. I think infantry units right now are great at killing buildings. And then scouts reduced 17%. I most certainly agree with that, because I think scouts are kind of at this point where they're just really strong. You guys have heard me complain about ghosts in the past, even though you haven't seen ghosts in probably 3 months. Ghosts are so good at killing buildings, so it's good to see that adjusted. Heavy Grunt, parties over cooldown has been reduced by 20 seconds down to 30. That's something I don't really care about. I haven't really seen that in competitive. And then let's move right on to the new armor types for Jump Pack Brutes and Elite Enforcers. They've altered the damage modifiers. So Jackrabbits are increased by 17% for the damage modifier. Grenade has been reduced 30. Grunt Mine has been reduced 23. Warthog Ram increased 15%, Goss reduced 12, and Suicide Grunt increased by 11. So what they're trying to do is kind of fit Jump Pack Brutes and Elite Enforcers, make them much stronger and more viable in that early game. That's exactly what they're doing right here. As you see by all these changes, they're going to make it so they're a little bit stronger and weaker against certain scenarios. So go ahead and make your 2 cents out on that one, see what you think about that, and let me know in the comments below as well, alongside the rest of the game and how you feel about it. So moving on to Heat of Battle. They're changing Heat of Battle for damage mitigation from 90 down to 60s. That's a 30% reduction. I most certainly agree with this. This is what I was talking about. Heat of Battle, Hellbringers with Redline are just ridiculous. They're faster. When they get a kill, they have 90% resistance. It's ridiculous. It's most certainly too strong, and that's why they're changing it. So going down to 60 is much more reasonable. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, when units have Heat of Battle active, whenever they kill another unit, they get an increase of resistance from 90% on damage. That is ridiculous. So now it is officially changed to 60%. That's much more reasonable. Moving on to the Jackrabbits. This is something I'm really interested in. Damage versus rush units and anti-infantry units increased by 75%. That is marvelous. It looks like they're trying to kind of fit the Jackrabbit into that anti-infantry rush play. Spotter drone upgrade, additional DPS increased by 30%. So they're trying to make them stronger and more worth that second upgrade. I'm sorry, actually technically that only upgrade, because they took away grenade launcher. Moving on to scouts except Jackrabbits. That means everything else. Damage versus rush units and anti-infantry units has been increased by 25%. So kind of the same scenario. They're trying to make scouts good against the cheese play. That's something excellent, especially snipers and elite enforcers as well. I'm sorry, not Elite Enforcers, sorry, Elite Rangers, even though you never see those. Those are the only two anti-infantry units I can think about. You'd rush, or that you deal with early game, except for Scouts will be good against, say, like, you know, all the building killers, and then at the same time as well, those Suicide Grunts. That's going to be something marvelous. Moving on to Ram for Scouts as well. This actually might be ram across the board. I'm not sure. They don't really specify because some other units can ram. But anyway, reflect damage has been reduced by 8% and 15%. Damage versus rush units and anti-infantry units has been increased by 8%. So that's something good. Like I said, they're trying to shut down these rush units and anti-infantry units. Damage versus scouts has been increased by 13%. So ram, those scouts that have rams, such as choppers, ghosts, those things are going to be much more viable against the remaining scouts. So that's something very excellent. I think that's going to be that's going to put scouts back in a good limelight. Now I'm very excited to see that. Moving on to suicide grunts. Speed has been increased by 29%. That is not just the suicide speed, guys. That is the base speed. That means that these bastards are going to be putting on Nike Roush runs and sprinting. That means that they are going to be so good against killing those squads of enemy infantry units. That's ridiculous. I think it's going to be so good. It has the armor type used by rush units and anti-infantry units, so they're putting them in the same kind of class. Damage versus core infantry reduced by 21%. I wonder why they're doing that. Damage versus infantry and cover increased by 50%. That's reasonable. That sucks right now. That has sucked since the launch of the game too. Like when suicide grunts attack garrisons. Like, what's the point? You just waste units. Damage versus rush units and anti-infantry units increased by 67%. These suicide grunts are going to be the solvent solution to all of the cheese plays. Suicide charge distance increased by 25% as well. Man, that's ridiculous. Okay, so not only do they have the Roush runs on for the 30% speed increase, but now they start that extra fast speed a 25% further away distance. That's ridiculous. So that means that suicide grunts are going to be hauling ass into enemy armies. That is awesome. And of course, to equate for this as well, they are going to reduce the cost from 120 down to 80-40. That's not bad. Honestly, I'm okay with that. I'm still kind of questioning the damage versus core infantry. I think because of the speed that they're going to have, that they're just going to try to make it so they aren't like so effective against these core infantry units like Marine squads. Because one suicide grunt can kill just about 3, maybe 2.5 Marine squads. I could be a little off by that, but that's usually what I have for experience. So I mean, changing that makes sense. That's probably okay. You know, I'm okay with it. I'm gonna accept it. Moving on to grunt mines. Damage versus core infantry increased 30%. Wow, that's crazy. Damage versus rush units and anti-infantry units increased by 25%. Damage versus scouts increased 6%. Damage versus medium increased 25%. No longer give unit XP when shot. Okay, so that's okay. I'm totally fine with that. That means that, say, like, you know, when you're shooting those mines on the ground, your units aren't getting veterancy. So that's okay. Damage versus core infantry, that makes perfect sense. Honestly, make the grunt mines more viable. They're so annoying to use as the player using the grunts, so that is good to see. And at the same time, also, like, say, increasing the damage versus all of these units, that is ridiculous. They're going to be so much more viable, maybe annoying as hell. You know, I'm going to make a call right now. This is going to be annoying as hell. All right, moving on to Marines. Partially reverted Marine buff. They're going to, yeah, so you guys remember the massive Marine buff? They definitely were too strong as opposed to grunts, the opposites from Marines, so I think this might be okay. Engineer HP reduced by 10%. Engineer heal value increased by 30%. Marine HP reduced by 16%. So yeah, it's literally, they just brought it back. And the Marine heal value increased by 20. So man, they nerfed these things. Marine DPS reduced by 19%, reverted. So they just brought back, they actually nerfed the Marines further than where they were just buffed to, in my opinion. Because even the heal value is the only positive thing you see there, guys, despite the heal value increased. Yeah, the only two positive things you see here are actually making the Marines harder to heal. So that's interesting. I don't know. What do you guys think about that one? That's interesting. Moving on to ODST, partially reverted ODST buff. HP has been reduced by 20%. Heal value increased by 30. DPS reduced by 15. So they kind of, yeah, this one's a legitimate partially reverted. Those Marines, they just nerfed them. I don't know why they call it partially reverted. ODST, partially reverted, made them a little bit less effective, but they still have that incredible range with the SMGs. They still have those mines. They still have all that extra bonus stuff, especially since infantry is going to get a massive buff against buildings. That's going to be interesting to see with these ODSTs. Still going to be really strong. Raid speed bonus 1220 has been reduced to 1017. And then Jerome's Mantis speed increased by 10%. So they're trying to make Jerome's Mantis and Raid a little bit more viable. Or I'm sorry, Just Jerome's Mantis a little more viable, and then they're trying to reduce the effectiveness of Raid because they are also going to be silencing a lot of this Hellbringer push stuff with Kinsano. So they've kind of touched base on those 3 units, or those 3 leaders I was talking about earlier. We have Kinsano, Cutter, and Jerome who just give an extra bit of buff to all their units. And then moving on to Elite Rangers, reverted DPS changes. DPS has been increased by 14%, so that's it right there. That's literally redundant, but that's okay. Elite Enforcers cost has gone from 130.75 down to 110.60. Man, I don't know about that, dude. Enforcers are so good in my opinion. I still love Enforcers to death. I know so many people like don't use them. They just, shun the Arbiter. They don't care about him. I love the Arbiter still to this date. I feel like he's an incredibly viable leader in certain scenarios. Not so much against this Marine Hellbringer meta, especially when snipers are better now too, but I still think that Enforcers are underutilized by players and that they can still be used very well in massive armies. So I'm excited to see what they do with that one. I want to see if they're a little bit stronger. Jump Pack Brute countermeasures mind laying ability, damage reduced by 13%, and then they remove the outer area of effect. So that's good. So they're making that less annoying because all it takes is, I've done it 3 times since the last big update where I've just Jump Pack Brute rush some guys just to cheese them and just get the match over with quickly because I had to go or something like that. And all it takes is like 15 Jump Pack Brutes to jump over a base with countermeasures, and then there's mines, bang, 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 and then he just resigns. It's just like that. So anyway, guys, that is going to wrap up this hot fix. This is live as of right now, so go ahead and hop in your games and start playing. These changes are most certainly the cherry on top of the giant update we received last week. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Slick from Breaking the Clutch, and we'll see you guys next time.